So this morning's Dharma talk is titled Be With All Things. I think I've given this kind of a talk with this title before. This is a very important time to rub it in, so to speak. Be with all things. This is part of the 16 precepts that we receive in this particular lineage, the Soto lineage of Zen Buddhism, going back to the 13th century, and actually even beyond that. So the 3 pure precepts are: don't do harm to yourself or others, do good to yourself and others, and the last one is the actual bodhisattva vow, which is where you start putting everything else in front of you, before you, and that is be with all things, sometimes translated as save all beings, starting with your own thought patterns. Don't go to war with anything. And of course, when I say that, the first thing we see is the way in which, if you're a meditator, then and you're strengthening the awareness, the ability to see clearly what's going on in your mind, your consciousness, your awareness. We see how we're kind of always at odds with ourselves. We're fighting against this, or we're having little mini skirmishes inside about should and I should, and then we bring in somebody else's opinion and idea. It's difficult. And especially gets difficult if where our life is not simple, it's complicated. That's why we have a monastery, so you can come here and simplify your life for however long you stay here. Just take it it's very simple. Just sit down. This is not a belief system. Belief is way overrated. Don't believe, don't disbelieve. And when I say that, how do you practice not believing it and not disbelieving it? Well, it's called the middle way. Just don't take a position on anything. But that practice of doing that might be seeing how much you just spontaneously grasp at one thing and reject something else. I like that, I don't like that. This is good, this is bad. Judging. This is why the world is so nuts, is because we've got so many people operating out of their thought patterns, their ideas, their opinions. Partial evidence. You can't have all the evidence for everything. No way you can have all the evidence. But in our world, a very materialistic-oriented world, we just get just enough evidence to convict, or just enough evidence to blame, or just enough evidence to give credit. And when you see a good example, I think, is a singer, someone who's born with a really good voice, and a great voice and a great ability to sing, to put it simply. They don't get credit for that. It isn't like they get some, anybody here, if they wanted to, could be president, right? We just found that out. So what am I saying here? What I'm emphasizing about be with all things is, rather than jump into this or that other political dynamic with your hopes and fears and operating out of your passion, aggression, and ignorance, and out of your anger or out of your distress, hold still and watch what's going on. Because see, here's what happens. If you start operating out of your, what is called in Buddhism, especially in Zen Buddhism, your little mind, that's what will happen. You'll have little tiny fillers, little things that'll make you feel better for 20 minutes. And it's all about me, and how I feel. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed how you're really concerned with how you feel about things? This is called narcissism, self-centeredness. Ego. Knock it off. And how do you do that? How do I stop being self-centered, egotistical? In our tradition, we're very biased here. You sit down, you hold still, and you see how crazy you are. You can't do it any other way that I know of. Sure, you can do drugs to make you feel this way or that way, or cover this up or cover that up. Doesn't mean it isn't, we're still roiling around under the surface and it's going to come out in 6 months, 6 years. I'm not against drugs. I misunderstand. I think, but we should do that out of awareness, not out of opinions and ideas and judgments and the desire to be right or make money or be powerful. We should do it out of be with all things. So one of the things that I just heard recently, we all are on Facebook, at least I am, you probably are. Is anybody here that isn't on Facebook? Okay. Well, you guys are wrong. No, you're probably doing quite, you don't need near as much Excedrin as the rest of us do. So, and Facebook is neither a place to be or not to be. If you happen to be there, you're just wired that way, and it's fine. So don't misunderstand. I have nothing to sell. But something that we hear is silence or as complacency. This is what this actually is a person looking at other people being silent and judging them. The most important kind of mindfulness that isn't taught at all that I'm about to teach right now, the mindfulness that is mind your own business. Keep your own counsel. Find out who you are. Don't you go out into the world and start going like this. You're doing it out of your own confusion. First, make peace here. If you step into any arena, I don't care what it is, and if you're still at war in your dreams, in your nightmares, then you'll actually convert that into trying to solve that problem by going out and blaming others or projecting that problem onto other people, other situations. We see it all the time. It's not some kind of deep psychology or philosophy. Praise and blame. So one of the things that happens when we act out of fear or act out of irritation or act out of the way the recent system and political system, it's just incredible anxiety and people blaming and the news media, as we know, is just full. It's just nauseating. There's so much of it. That being said, I still think you should look at it. You should watch. You should know what's going on, what all of your neighbors and all of the other people in the world, what they're observing, what they're looking at. Not that you need to do exactly that. Just like have a couple people here who don't do Facebook. I don't blame you. But I don't give you credit either. So what happens is when we start functioning out of our fear or functioning out of when someone says silence is complacency, to take that position, probably, I'm not really sure about this, but probably someone who's saying that about others is someone who doesn't really understand what silence is. If you start to act out of your confusion, what happens there is you get a little bit of feedback, a little bit of feeling good about, at least I'm doing something. I'm not saying you shouldn't go and join some kind of a community to support whatever it may be. Absolutely, do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't go and support Planned Parenthood. A lot of people are doing that in the name of, what's his name? I never can remember his name, that guy. So there's lots of ways that are doing that could be done in a more inclusive kind of way, where you can look out and reach out and include. Include is a really good word. It's one of the words that I like, along with the word observe. See what's happening. So the downside of acting out of your neurosis, your unsolved warfare, the downside of that is, and it's a big downside, is all of the anger or aggression that's coming out, even if it's just verbal on Facebook, or if it's just, and I'm not saying it's not justified. There's enough craziness in the world. You could justify anything. I mean, you could, I feel it. So if I'm feeling it, I've been training my mind for 40 plus years. And if I'm feeling this, like, I'd like to go and pop somebody one, then I'm sure, well, I'm not convinced, but probably you're feeling some of that, maybe. But You shouldn't do anything unless you have to. If you don't have to do it, you also shouldn't shut down on that. Don't shut down on the neurosis, the anger. Don't shut down on the discomfort. Don't try to get rid of anything. But include it with awareness. Because if you don't, if you start shutting down, putting little manhole covers on everything you don't like, whether you're doing it with chemicals or whether you're doing it with your attitude or with your thought patterns, clamp, 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 then what's happening is if there is an opportunity out of awareness and out of this incredible state of being a living being, which is temporary, if there is an opportunity for you to fully manifest your humanity, your personal worth as an individual tiny dot of sand called a human being, if there is a possibility of you actually doing something where you could call it the harmonics of your life start to resonate with everything. It's called harmony. And I'm not even a musician. An example of that, a little example of that kind of harmony situation. It's in nature. It's part of the whole way everything is wired. Everybody knows what a Tibetan bell is. They look very similar. And so when you strike it, or if you run the striker around it, it'll make a tone. Actually, it makes lots of tones. Isn't that correct? Yeah. And some of those tones are kind of deviating from what the fundamental tone is. They're kind of going away from it, so that it doesn't sound so great. But then we find another one. It's just beautiful. Everything seems so together and so synchronized. Yet if you look at it closely, there's very individual things happening there. Very tiny individuality. So harmonics, first, in order to understand that as human beings with our consciousness, first you have to see the disharmony. And you're not going to see the disharmony if you keep covering it up, because you don't like to suffer. The Buddha, the first words out of the Buddha's mouth, as far as we know, 2,500 years ago, so it could have been, where's the bathroom? But it was life is suffering. Life is suffering. And this is not a negative statement. It's difficult. Everyone is having some kind of discomfort going on all the time. You can't be awake or asleep without having something that's not exactly right. So bring awareness to that. This is what meditation practice, whether you become a Buddhist or not, I do not care. If you do, then you're going to do this more intensely. If you decide to do this, just meditate now and then maybe that's all you need to do. I'm not going to argue with your karma. I'm not going to argue with the causes and conditions which are countless that brought you into this room. On the other hand, when I sit up here and you come and sit down, you give me permission to talk. Who's that guy? He doesn't even know who he is. So the idea here is that when things fill up with our conversation around it, our judgment, our pushing, our pulling, when it fills up with that, then you can actually see with clarity what you really need to do next that is in harmony with all the other things that are in your world, all the other things that are happening. If you just do it out of propaganda, and the propaganda isn't just the untruths or the promotions that are coming from the negative end. It's coming from both ends. There's propaganda about everything, all of our lives. Anybody can be president. You can be anything you want to be. No, you can't. You can't do that. I can't be an elephant. Oh, I'm getting there. So you can't. So to say that is propaganda about trying to cheer you up or something, or make you look away from what the Buddha discovered. Life is suffering. And it's not taught because people are afraid of anything that they want to have the power of positive thinking. Just think positively all the time. Well, I've been looking at this stuff for a long time, and I'm probably one of the most positive people you'll ever meet. I'm the most positive person I know. That sound familiar? And the way that can happen is don't take a position on it. If you don't take a position on anything, then the positionless awareness starts to arise, and you start to see through walls. I'm not saying you literally can see through a wall, but there isn't anything that you're particularly unclear about. Being clear about confusion is clarity. But to go towards confusion and have a bunch of thoughts about how to fix it, how to stop it, who's to blame, why it's happening, and all of the other things, countless numbers of things that we end up doing. This just adds to the disharmony of everything. So don't do it. Again, coming back around full circle, there are all kinds of ideas of things that you could actually do. There are organizations that you could join with if you feel like you really need to do something, and look at it from that point of view. Find some way to include others in your life. There's a lot of people that are ready to include you. So, Sandru, who lives in New York, sent me an email, and I thought this is kind of the inspiration for this, and I don't think he'll mind. I don't know if he's there today, but mind me reading. He says, I realized, he just sent this a few days ago, and it's kind of inspired me to give this talk again, this Be With All Things. I realized earlier this week I'd been hearing being with all things, quote unquote, as if the verb was active. I was thinking about it like I had to do something to be with others. It struck me that the act of just sitting on the cushion quietly, as you've been teaching, is exactly being with all things. It's going on all the time if I quit messing with it and quit trying to do something nice. Sandru. As a teaching person, I'm delighted to hear something like that from someone. So it's not that sitting on the cushion is going to, I'm starting to feel so peaceful. It may feel like crap. But stay there anyway. It's called discipline. You want the fancy word for it. It's also called patience. There's another fancy word. Hold still. Hold still. For once in your life, unplug the food processor mind. It'll keep spinning for a while. Sit down, hold still, and see what is true for yourself. There's nothing to believe, nothing to disbelieve. The discovery you will make can be characterized as disappointing from the point of view of ego, because it doesn't get included. It doesn't get rejected either, because it's unreal. There is no solid central authority anywhere. When my teacher Kobun Chinaroshi who died in 2002, was a Zen master, said, get your own authority. Well, what you find out is there is no such thing. There is no authority. But by approaching it that way, we try to see, how do I really validate, understand who I am without, bowing down to somebody else? How do you find that out? Look at the mind and see who's in charge. What is going on here? You will see an identity that is constantly in flux based on causes and conditions. This is why if I insult you, even if I'm pretending, if I just look at you and and insult you, you'll feel it, even though you know it's a joke. If I look at you and compliment you, even though I'm just doing it as you'll kind of puff up a little bit, because I'll find something that'll resonate with you. This is ego. If ego is seen through and is seen to be unreal, I'm not saying you wouldn't notice if somebody complimented, and it wouldn't notice if somebody criticized you, but a criticism wouldn't take you onto the battlefield, and a compliment wouldn't necessarily make you blush or make you puff up. Because when that happens, because your mind is no longer a centralized being, but is everywhere, I'm not saying you're reading minds, but since there's nothing to defend anymore, then you can see very, very clearly why someone is complimenting you. You see, it's about them. It's not about you. You can't be seen. If you transcend this mind, you become invisible. From the relative way of talking about it. From the ultimate point of talking about it, you don't do anything. Nothing happens. That's why it's so disappointing to ego. So if you want to do something about the stress, about what is happening, and speaking specifically about the news, what's happening in the news was all this divisiveness going on. Find out who you are. Hold still and just observe what comes and goes and comes and goes. Don't meddle. You can practice being with all things just by being with your thought patterns. Stop trying to be somebody special. Stop trying to be great. Stop it. Be genuine. And this doesn't mean, well, I feel like murdering people. Sokuzan said, be genuine. I'm going to take a few people out. I've been watching too much Game of Thrones. Well, actually, not enough, because I really like that. So, see what else I have here in these. Yes, this is something else I say quite often, is don't miss your life. Don't cover it up. I'm not saying enjoy your misery, but I'm saying if you're feeling negative, take that as an opportunity to watch what is happening. Bring your awareness to that and don't push on it, aggression. Don't pull on it, passion. And don't shut down on it, ignorance. Those are the three poisons in Buddhism. That's why Buddhism is such a powerful teaching and is still with us after 2,500 years. And through the generosity and kindness of my teachers, I'm here. No other reason. If you want causes and conditions. Questions, please?
When we're operating out of our thoughts or opinions, we seem to be drawing on our feelings or partial evidence and our ego.
Okay.
When we are operating out of awareness,
yes.
Are we drawing on something?
Yes.
What are we drawing on?
You're drawing on just a bigger picture. It's very similar, because since we're still embodied, so we're still here, but this particular musical instrument, to use that image or that metaphor again, is listening to everything instead of just trying to play its own little tune. That's why when we do the chants here, if you listen to the chants, if you listen to the way that happens, that if you listen to the Doan is the leader, so and Shiezan was the Doan this morning. And if you listen to that, you don't have to pay any attention to what your voice sounds like. Your voice will whether you're a good singer or not, won't make any difference. But it won't disrupt that. It won't make it, imbalanced. Won't challenge it. So it's a similar kind of metaphor, or the metaphor is pointing to your life as like you're, instead of working with your own little crazy tune here about trying to be somebody other than who you are, like instead of dealing with those kinds of things, you don't ignore those, because those are part of it. Your own karma is actually resonating with everyone you meet. You can feel it. Sometimes you can feel that. Sometimes you meet people and you haven't even talked to them yet, and you already don't like them. You didn't even give them a chance. You hate them. Well, maybe. And then other people, even from a distance, not because they're so cute or anything, but you just feel you resonate with them. All you have to do is maybe hear them talk to somebody else. You haven't even met them yet, and already you like them. You have an affinity with that person. You don't even know what it is. So this same thing happens by training our mind, sitting on the cushion, by doing chanting the sutras together, by all the things we do with others to cooperate. Communicate, cooperate. 2 C's. Very important. More?
Will we recognize the contrast between operating out of thoughts?
Only ego's interested in recognizing something. Am I doing okay? What do you think about what I'm thinking? It won't matter. When I say it won't matter, I don't mean it dismissively. I'm just saying that you'll just find yourself functioning. You won't be too concerned about how you appear to others or even how you appear to yourself. You're all through being self-centered, so to speak. This doesn't mean that you are going to run around without brushing your teeth or something. Like Trungpa Rinpoche once said, trying to explain enlightenment or awakening, it says people who are realized or awakened are not crazy. Otherwise we would need an enlightenment ward. People laughed at it back then too. But on the other hand, you might find yourself out of sync with other people who are very much into their ego trip or their idea about their propaganda or things they believe or grasp or things they think are true and other things they think are false. You might run into them and you're just kind of hanging out. You might go this way a little bit and then you might go, but you don't have any story about it particularly, like backing up everything you do. Well, the reason I'm doing that, it's quite all right to say, I have no idea why I'm doing this. When I meet somebody who's a meditator and they've been training, especially at this monastery for a while, and they come to me and say, I have no idea why I'm here, I think, I don't actually do that. I wait till they turn around. Gotcha. And why? Because this is genuine. You actually can meet your own mind here. I'm sure there are lots of other places you can do that. But actually be genuine. No longer at war with yourself. Very, very valuable thing to do with your life. Don't miss your life. Don't clamp down on the karma in your life that you don't like. You see it, you're going to pass away. You're going to be right back here. Back to third grade, second grade, fourth grade, for 3 lifetimes, then back to third grade. And it's just a metaphor, yes.
2 questions from Sandru.
Very good, Sandru.
His first one, but being with all things doesn't mean doing something, does it? Is shikantaza exactly being with?
Shikantaza is exactly, as you said in your email, Sandra, shikantaza exactly. You're actually practicing being with all things. But there's all kinds of activity going on. You're here and you're watching how something arises and you don't push on it, you don't dismiss it, you don't accept it. I've never told anybody that I know of, you just have to accept it. Have I ever said that? I'm asking the head monk here because he has a good memory. What I'm saying is, I'm sure I might say that to somebody if they were really stressed or something, but generally that's not particularly good advice. Just look at it, yes.
Second question, does the end of confusion mean I see I'm already with all things?
I follow what you're saying, Sandra, but it's actually so beyond that it's both and neither. You actually start to transcend that the mind doesn't stops having a location. It can locate anytime, but it locates from the point of view of this path and the vows you receive or you observe here. You always relocate to benefit all beings, and when there's no beings to benefit, then there isn't anyone there. There might be a body functioning, but there's no one there. This doesn't mean you're not seeing flowers in the garden. It doesn't mean that you're not wiping your butt in the bathroom. It doesn't mean that you've somehow gone into some kind of a holy God realm. This is a misunderstanding of sacred world. Yes?
Question from Ethan Hirschenfeld out in New York.
Ethan.
His question, on the subject of not taking a position, and then in quotes he has, silence in the face of evil is itself evil, end quote. So at this moment when the people taking power seem committed to hate speech, discrimination, intimidation, aren't we obligated to speak and to act? Mustn't we take a position like when we see someone beat their dog?
That's a little bit different. If you're here, there's someone there, there's a dog, and there's someone with a stick. Stop them. But when it gets abstract and starts to go into philosophies and there's too many layers, it's trying to look through plywood. You can't do it. Operate where you're at. Operate right where you're at, and then, because nothing is separate, everything starts to resonate. The harmonics we're looking for. But if you do what they're doing, then you're going to have to build tanks. You're going to have to organize, and as they say, and go to war with these people, and go on their terms. So the most important thing here, Ethan, is if you're meditating a lot, then the whole philosophy and the whole propaganda, or the whole thing about being afraid of what they're doing, those guys, will become more and more clear. Not saying you shouldn't do things, but if you do something out of anger and fear, if that is your motivation, if that's then we might as well be in Germany in the 1930s, because people because of the situation, they got so fearful they shut down, and actually Hitler and Mussolini were able to do what they did because of the complacency. So look very closely at that, and Ethan, you look very closely at it. I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything, but if you're going to do something, let's put it this way, I'll tell a story. I'll make it up. That's the best kind of story. A person is sitting and sitting and sitting, and then they see there's somebody protesting fracking up here in Muskegon or wherever it may be, and it's choiceless. They have to go and protest. They have to go do that. You're not going to talk that person out of it. They're not even going to explain to you why they're going. But if it has to come out of awareness, it can't come out of some kind of strategy to show up as a protester, or have some kind of little lecture, sitting on your shoulders saying, "Don't be complacent. Don't be complacent." Buying into that bull. Don't do it. Yes.
Question from Shane out in California.
Yes.
On the subject of harmony and vibration, should one change their frequency to be with another person, especially when their suffering is great?
Yeah, no frequency. Don't do anything. Always receive. The most misunderstood form of generosity is receiving. Most people think it's about giving something. It's not about giving. Receive everything. Receive when your mother-in-law or your mother is chattering away at you, or not to pick on mothers, but receive. Listen. My 90-10 rule is, some of you have heard this, is talk 10% of the time, listen 90. Listen, receive what's coming in, and don't add on to it. When you hear someone say something, rather than saying, "Well, that's crazy," as soon as you do that, awareness collapses, and you've separated yourself into the person who's really smart and is not crazy, and the person who's the poor thing. They're all wound up in themselves. Be with all things. Be with all things. This is called compassion, feeling with. Every time you see feelings, emotions, even if it's some of the terrible things we're having, you can't relate to that in a sane way if you fight it. You have to resonate with it, and it's not easy. There has to be some kind of frequency. I'm just using that as an example, harmonics and frequency, and that happens in music and physics, which I know nothing about, and happens in everything. Happens in society. Yes, sir.
At the place where I'm currently residing,
Yes.
We learn and discuss worry as it relates to how much control we have over it. So
Yes.
we talk about 0 to 100%. How much control do you have over a person acting a certain way, and then the response that we're taught in a sense to give is 0%, and then 0 to 100%, how much control do you have over how you react to that person? And I guess the question I'm trying to understand a little bit more is, in taking control of my reaction, am I too attached to is there too much attachment there to the idea of control?
Yes. Bingo. Using the word control, you really don't have any control of anything. As I've often said, go look in the mirror. How are you doing so far? Wouldn't you have rather have been a condor? I mean, or a blue heron. Those guys don't have any enemies, or at least the enemies they have are really slow moving and run along the ground. And they get to eat all the fish they want. I mean, they could eat 17 fish, one right after another if they wanted to. Think about it. If you have control, be a condor. Or the other kind of control is to see that you have no control, which is the most powerful kind of control, because then there isn't anything that you aren't connected with. Then your influence is far-reaching. Maybe not in this lifetime. Start now. There is no end to this. Something that hasn't begun can't end, and who you are hasn't begun. Therefore, it can't end. Yes.
When we're constantly seeing what we think about things,
Yes.
how do we be with all things?
Just practice on your own mind. Practice with your mind. We do it here. We sit down, hold still, and we do it. You have a lot of lifetimes piling up to bring you to this point. You could say it that way, or you could say no lifetimes at all. But here you are. Whatever it is, it's complicated. That's a great movie. Did anybody see that movie? That's a great movie. It's complicated. So sit down, hold still, watch what continues to move, and see the way it keeps piling up and piling up and piling up. And if you do that, you'll eventually, this is just a way of talking about it, it may not function just like this, you'll see where this gets its energy from. But unless you actually look at it directly, what it is, you won't be able to see the deep sources of all of that. And when you see them, you won't really know what they are. You won't go and tell your friend, hey, I saw the source of my anger. Got that nailed.
We have to stop.
Oh, we do have to stop. Well, I think we're going to do a daily Dharma gathering now.
Yeah.
That starts in 6 or 7 minutes.
We'll dedicate the merit.
You had a quick question, Sheldon?
I can ask the question quickly.
Well, you can ask it and I'll see what I can do with it.
When you talk about don't
Yes.
mind your own business and don't meddle,
Yeah,
in regards to going out,
I follow you. Question.
does that also apply to thinking about your own thoughts,
You mean adding on to your thoughts?
or just thinking about what you're thinking?
It could. Making ego self-centeredness wants to be real. We want to be a real person. Even if we're successful, that's real. If we're failing, at least we're somebody, but we're failing. So we're always clinging to a self. There isn't one. But that's for you to understand. I'm making a statement, but it's not something you don't believe that. Don't believe anything I said. Forget everything. If anything does stick, it's probably because it might be important for you personally. Everything else is extra. Thank you.
We'll dedicate the merit. If you look in the back of your chant books, you find the dedication. I'd also like to remind everybody that this Saturday is our all-day sitting, so please come and join us for that. And we have donation boxes in the hallway. We also accept donations on PayPal, other electronic forms.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san ji ji-hu shi-son mu-sa mo-ko-sa mo-ko-ho-ja. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, the great prajna, paramita. O Buddhas and bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.